Good evening to our East Coast friends and families, and good afternoon to all of you on the West Coast. My name is Robert May, and I'm the Executive Director at the Kensington in Redondo Beach here in California. Welcome to Kensington Senior Living's New Year, New You. This is all about you. We have a great panel of experts who will share important techniques and knowledge this afternoon. This is to help you boost your morale, preserve your energy, keep your stressors in check, and find new ways to become even stronger and resilient through this very difficult journey. Kensington Senior Living is committed to continually explore these and new facets of caregiving to better understanding the rich and complicated web of aging. This afternoon, I have the great pleasure of introducing Susan Evans, not only a colleague, but a good friend, and like many of you participating in this seminar today, a caregiver. Susan Evans will be our moderator for this afternoon's event. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Robert, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Susan Evans, and I am honored to welcome you to today's webinar, New Year, New You. I have a connection and deep respect with the caregiver experts from OPICA, the Alzheimer's Association, and UCLA. My father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 11 years ago. Overnight, I went from being a daughter to a caregiver for my father, concerned about the progression of his disease, and my dear mother who had lost her partner in life. In 2015, we made the decision to move my father to a home. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. The guilt was overwhelming. Caring for my father at home was becoming too much for my mother, and I did not want to lose both my parents to Alzheimer's disease. Our family chose Kensington Senior Living because of their expertise and commitment to dedicated memory care. It was the hardest yet best decision we made. The team at Kensington have taken exceptional care of my father over the last 6 years, and my mother, who pre-COVID had lunch with him daily. I am one of the 36 million caregivers in the country, and I applaud the work that Susan Howland, Monica Moore, and Carol Hahn are doing to support caregivers everywhere. Thank you, Kensington, for supporting and sponsoring their efforts through educational webinars. It is a lonely disease riddled with guilt for the caregivers. Please join me in welcoming Susan, Monica, and Carol. It is brilliant that Kensington has partnered together with OPICA, the Alzheimer's Association, and UCLA to bring educational webinars into the community. Please ask any questions in the Q&A function of Zoom, and we will get to those at the end of the program. Welcome, ladies. I would love if you can share with the audience a little bit about yourselves. Can we start with Susan, please?
Thank you, and thank you for having me today. So I'm Susan Howland. I'm a gerontologist, and I'm a program director at the Alzheimer's Association California Southland. And like many of us here, I come to this with both a professional interest as well as a personal impact of Alzheimer's. So thank you.
And Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Hahn. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm the community educator at OPICA Adult Day Program and Counseling Center in Los Angeles. And I too, just like both Susans, are here professionally, and also my father had Alzheimer's disease.
I'm so sorry. That's just such a brutal disease. And Monica?
Hi, everybody. Good evening and good afternoon. My name is Monica Moore. I work for the Mary S. Easton Center for Alzheimer's Disease Research at UCLA. I'm the Community Health Program Manager, so I do wonderful events like this, try to translate some of the research that our scientists are doing, and talk about the world of caregiving, which I'm so grateful that we are here as well. And I too was a family caregiver, so all of us come from professional as well as personal backgrounds, which I think really add to the wealth of knowledge. And I've had the great pleasure of knowing Susan and Carol for many years now. So this is a fun event for all of us today.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us. I'm going to go ahead and get to the questions. We at registration, all of our audience members or people that are attending had the opportunity to ask some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and get to those. First question. My wife is always asking to go home, in parentheses, but we have lived in this house for more than 40 years. Why doesn't she understand this? And Monica, could we start with you on that?
Of course, yeah. Thank you to whoever submitted that question. Goodness, that's such a common question. We have, I think about the support groups that I lead, and I think about the people who are in it, and that's something that comes up very often. And it's, we don't know exactly why. We don't know the reason behind lots of these behaviors, the true exact reason. But what is often associated with this need and with this desire is a desire to be safe, a desire to be comforted. And so we always tell the caregivers, the family members, to say, try to just reassure your wife and say, it's all right. I've got you. Don't argue with her. Don't argue with her because you're wrong. If you say, honey, we've lived here for 40 years. This is great. This is all of our memories. She's going to say you're wrong. And guess what? You are, because she's the one that's right, because there's no arguing with a person with dementia. And really just trying to tell her, it's like, you're safe. Or try to distract her, take her outside, see if there's another reason why she's acting maybe agitated or questioning this. Take a look at what time of the day does this question happen? Is it maybe in the afternoon? Maybe she's hungry, maybe she's thirsty. People with dementia, as the disease progresses through their brain, they're not able to respond to their own needs in the right way. So let's say if I'm thirsty, I know to get a glass of water, but a person with dementia, they may act out and have behaviors like this or other types of behaviors when really all it is they're thirsty. So it takes a detective work on the part of the caregiver, absolutely, to figure all of this out.
I'm going to reflect back on what you said, that all of us have a personal connection. And I think that makes you so valuable in what you provide to the community, because you can understand, you can really relate. So thank you. Susan, do you have something to add to that?
I think this just reminds me of a story from a caregiver. He was caring for his wife. They'd been married 50 years, love of his life. And every day she asked, when are we going home to Arizona? And one day she asked him 49 times. And on the 50th time she asked him, he blew up at her. And he said, I feel horrible. So I think, to me, it's also, how do we respond to that question the first time and the second time and the third time as if it's the first time ever being asked? So with that same kind of calmness, matter-of-fact approach. And then sometimes we're not perfect. So when he did blow up kind of on that 50th time and he was so upset, I said, let it go. She already has forgotten about it. We're all humans and we all need to be kind, not only to the person we're caring for, but we need to really be kind to ourselves and know that we're all doing the best that we can.
Sounds like patience with a capital P-A-T.
Every letter capitalized.
Yes, exactly. And bold. Carol?
I don't have much else to add to others' comments, but I think a big thing here too is that we know with dementia that people lose short-term memories first, and then their long-term memories. So, the person may not remember that they actually lived in this house. I think of my dad, he would go out to get the newspaper in the morning and it was out by the curb, and then he would turn around and sometimes he'd go to the wrong house. And we were lucky to have neighbors that, would help him get back home, but he didn't remember that's where he lived. So that was part of the disease process. It wasn't anything that he was trying to do deliberately.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Those were all great. I love how you give examples. It's Susan telling about the 49 times. Boy, we've all been through that. And it's really hard to not beat yourself up that you lost your patience. So thank you for that. My 83-year-old wife consistently asks if her parents are coming to pick her up and bring her home. Her parents have passed for many years. How do I respond to these questions? Susan, can we start with you on that?
Of course. And this really is a nice follow-up question to the I want to go home, because a lot of what both Monica and Carol just shared really apply to the situation as well. So again, this woman might not be living in our reality, might not be living in 2022, most likely is living, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So you can't argue that you will never win this argument, as well as, you're not home, or we need to go home. So to me, one approach I take, and it's really a little bit more philosophical, is what is our goal with caregiving? Typically, it's to keep this person safe, engaged, and calm. So what can we do not to upset her by saying, well, your mom's dead, your father's dead, which might elicit a negative response or grieving. But, I'm a big fan of lying. I know a lot of people also kind of call it white lies or therapeutic fiblets, but whatever we can do to keep the calmness and allow that individual to stay in her reality, join that reality. And it could be, you know what, I think they're coming soon. Why don't we go do this instead? And again, kind of that distraction, redirection sometimes will help in this situation. I recently heard of improv as a way to communicate with people with Alzheimer's. And so whatever is said, your response is yes, and. Is my mom coming to pick me up today? Yes. And why don't we go ahead and have a snack so you have a full stomach before she comes and gets you? So I know that really a lot of people don't feel comfortable with that therapeutic fiblet, the white lie, the blatant lie, whatever you want to call it. So it's trying to find what is comfortable and keeps that individual in that kind of pleasant mindset, but also you as a caregiver feel comfortable, that fits your values as well.
I love that. So really, in a nutshell, it's like pick and choose your battles, like raising children, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Carol, can you add to that? Or I'm sorry, Susan, if you were done. Actually, I froze for a while, so I didn't hear part of that. I'm sorry. It says my internet connection is unstable, but I think we're okay. Carol?
Well, one of the things I love to say is I haven't seen your mom lately, because it isn't a lie, right? So that, it helps the person. Again, we don't have to fight. We don't have to tell them something they're not going to believe. And sometimes it's just maybe they're feeling lonely. They want that love that they had for their mom. So I like to talk to them about their parents. Your mom was such a cool lady. And oh, I love those chocolate chip cookies that she made. Get them talking about their parents, or maybe even looking at some pictures. They might not recognize that it's their parents, but you can say, look at that woman in that picture. Doesn't she look like she would be a wonderful mom, or something similar to that, just to get their mind off actually seeing their mom, but just that feeling of love that comes with that.
Yeah, very well said. And Monica?
If I was going to see if I can chime in just on one thing. I think Susan brings up a really good point, and something talking about like those therapeutic white lies, fiblets, therapeutic fibs, whatever you want to call them. Part of my role at the Easton Center is leading some caregiver support groups, and we have a lot of these different support groups that are available. And that's one thing, we're proud of our participants when they've been in the group for a while, and then we tell them about these fibs. We say this helps with behaviors, and then maybe 4 months later, there's a new member who joins in, and like, you know what, Carol, what you should do is you should come up with these little fiblets for your mom. And it makes us as facilitators so happy, because we're seeing how our caregivers are learning. And it's not deceit. You're not being a bad child. You're not being an unfaithful spouse. But you're really sort of helping them. You're helping guide them, because you think about their brains, they must be so confused on a daily basis. And by sort of reassuring and reaffirming whatever they're thinking, even if it is by the way of maybe not the truth, that really can help. And it can help you as a caregiver as well. Now we know some people who are like, man, I'm so good at lying. Man, it's great. Like I'm a professional liar now. I lie to my mom all the time. But you see but they say how it does help them on a day-to-day basis.
Can I ask you three, do you think it's like trial and error? Like what's really going to work best with my dad, or what's really going to work best with my uncle, or what's going to work best with my friend? Is it a little bit of trial and error to have a little bag of tricks and say, oh, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to try that?
Oh, I love the bag of tricks. Always have at least 10 bag of tricks in your bag just in case. And it also, depends on the day, the stage, who is there. There's so many different factors. So if you can always have an easy way to pivot that you've also thought ahead about, it's a lot easier. And I think that's the challenge. It's, family members are so overwhelmed with that day-to-day care. It's often hard to sit back, be the detective that Monica talked about, and maybe even strategize and plan things out in advance. But that can oftentimes ease a situation, reduce the likelihood of a catastrophic reaction, or kind of maintain that calm, pleasant status.
Yeah, like, I sort of wish it was a lot easier, and I wish it wasn't trial and error, because then we'd be like, all right, so Susan, what you do with your dad is blank, and you're like, great, thanks, and that works. Our jobs would be so much easier. But it's trial and error, because there's also the world of, who was this person pre-dementia? Was your mom happy-go-lucky, and or was she a pistol? And what was your role in the family? All of these play a part. Like, can you get your dad to do something? I don't know. Like, as a woman, maybe not. Cultural issues all play a part in terms of this bag of tricks. So I'm actually going to say that you need about 10 bags filled with about 10 tricks in each bag to really be able to properly, figure out what you need to do on a daily basis. It's so hard. It's so hard. That's why I think we're happy to be here.
Yeah, none of us want to be experts at this. None of us want this.
No.
So all this is so helpful for people that are struggling. And during COVID, this roller coaster of adult daycare is open, it's closed. My kids' daycare is open, it's closed. It's been incredibly stressful. Here's a great one that I love. Can diet and exercise really slow my wife's dementia? Carol.
Oh, this is one of my favorite questions, because I am always so thrilled with how we can keep ourselves healthy. And there really has been a lot of research lately showing that healthy lifestyles can also help the brain. And staying physically active, I don't like the word exercise, because it sounds like we put some special clothes on and go to the gym and stuff, but just that physical activity, that's one of the most important things that you can do to stay healthy and reduce health problems. And aerobic exercise, those things that get our heart rate going, can improve our cardiovascular fitness. So that's our heart, our blood vessels. And we've learned over the years that what's good for the heart is also good for the brain. So there have been many studies lately that have shown exercise increases blood flow to the brain. It helps build new brain cells, and it helps with those transmitters that get messages from cell to cell in the brain. And so we can't always say it'll slow it down, but it may just help hold things off a little while. And also, we know that the brain is one of the most active parts of the body, and it really relies on nutrients from food to be able to perform well. So right now, there's been a lot of research on what they've called the MIND diet. And the MIND diet is a combination of the Mediterranean diet or Mediterranean lifestyle. Again, I don't like the word diet because it sounds like we have to do something really special. It's more of a lifestyle. So it's part Mediterranean lifestyle of eating, and then what we call the DASH approach to eating. And the DASH diet or lifestyle helps with hypertension or high blood pressure. So this diet includes foods that have strong antioxidant effects. So lots of berries, green leafy vegetables. I always say that I want people to have a colorful plate, to have lots of different colors, because then we know we're getting a lot of a variety of nutrients. Also includes things like nuts and the good oils like olive oils. And then we want to avoid foods that are things like red meats, the fried foods, the sweets, right? All those extra sugars, all the processed foods. Get back to more of the basic things that can help.
Someone made me an olive oil cake. Has anyone ever had an olive oil cake? It was so good. Now it's not perfect, but it gives you a little bit of olive oil in there, for your cake. I like my sweets, but Monica or Susan, do you have anything to add to our diet?
One thing, some of the doctors that I work with, they tell me like when they have patients who come in and, they give them initial diagnoses of Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, and people will say, what can I do? What can I do to slow this down for myself or for my loved one, whoever's the one who's diagnosed? And they, often they will say that it is the world of movement and watching what you eat. And then also the third component is socialization. And again, that's been harder in these past 2 years, where I think we've seen more of an increase of cases of dementia due to social isolation. But really, we can control some of these factors. And again, we can't reverse Alzheimer's disease. We can't stop it, but we can alleviate some of the symptoms and have a person operate at a higher level longer. And I think that's, really what we're all hoping for once someone's been diagnosed, is keep them up to their norm as long as possible.
And I was going to add, nothing that we know of right now changes that biology of the brain, but you can do things that also kind of enhance, like you said, the other things. So if somebody exercises, maybe they're going to be less likely to have a fall. Somebody who is, eats a nutritious diet, again, that's going to be good for their body and their brain. There's some really interesting studies. The Alzheimer's Association funds the US Pointer study, and it's not looking at people who already have dementia, but it's looking at individuals who have maybe a higher risk of developing dementia, as well as what I love, they call a suboptimal lifestyle. So it's looking at how do individuals change multiple areas of their lifestyle and what is the long-term impact on their brain. So there's a lot of interesting research. And I think, again, great diet, exercise is not a negative in anybody's book. It's only going to be beneficial.
Agreed. And, I used to go for a walk with my dad. And it got him out walking, it got me out walking, and it gave us something to do, which was great, because sometimes I really struggled with, what we could do together. So that's all really good advice. And now we come to, people are always telling me I should take care of myself. I don't have time. How do I incorporate self-care into my already super busy routine? Susan, do you want to start with that?
So I'll start, and I love that Carol has these taboo words like diet and exercise. And I think the same is probably true with self-care. It's really understandable that most family members don't have a lot of time for themselves. Caregiving is physically exhausting, emotionally exhausting, mentally exhausting. But you don't want to think of self-care as something where you have to put on special clothing or go to an expensive gym. It can be something like taking a walk around the block. What we find a lot of times is that caregivers don't give themselves permission to do that. You look at their to-do list for the day, and it's everything about that individual they're caring for. Never is there anything like, let me stop and, stretch for 10 minutes. Let me go for that quick walk. When you talk about self-care, it's everything from going to the doctor on a regular basis, making sure all your medication is refilled and you're taking it appropriately. It is diet, but it's also looking at how do you build in small things that actually benefit. I had one caregiver who had some limited mobility. So what she would do is she'd sit in a chair next to her husband who was reading a newspaper, and she'd read a book for 10 minutes, and that escape took her away. And to her, that was self-care. So I think it's really being clever and being creative as to how to find these little pockets of time where you can do a quick stretch, walk around the neighborhood for 5 minutes, go play ball with the dog, something that you enjoy that kind of gives you that ability to kind of take that deep breath and kind of renew your energy and spirit.
I'm going to go to Carol next, because I don't know if our audience was able to enjoy, but you will be given a copy of it. And Carol's actually going to demonstrate it later in this webinar. But do you want to talk about your kind of breathing break? Is this appropriate time to talk about that?
Sure. In fact, we can do a quick one right now, because just like Susan was saying, is that it doesn't have to be this long period of time. And I think also it's so great if you can get your loved one involved. Susan Evans, you were talking about walking with your dad. And then Susan Howland, you were giving the example of reading together, right? It doesn't have to be this big separate thing that you do. You can do it with your loved one. But let's just practice a little breathing here right now. And I always laugh because people say to me, well, I know how to breathe, right? Hopefully you do, but we often sometimes breathe real shallow, just in this upper part of the lungs, instead of getting way down in deep. When we breathe deeper, it really helps slow down the body and get us into more of that relaxation kind of style. So what we're going to do is a breathing exercise that you can do anywhere, anytime. Well, I tell people don't do this while you're driving because we're going to close your eyes. But other than that, okay, so go ahead and just get comfortable in your chair and let your eyes close, just as a way of blocking out any distractions, just bringing yourself inside a little bit more. And what we're going to do is, to the count of 6, we're going to breathe in, we're going to take a little pause, and then we'll breathe out to the count of 6 and take another pause. So I'm going to count. And if any reason you can't breathe for that length, you go at whatever length works for you. Okay, you don't have to stay with me if that's too much for you. So let's get comfortable, eyes closed, and just start to breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then back out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Little pause. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pause out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just take a few more of those deep breaths at your own pace. And then slowly just let your eyes blink open. Okay, so this is a little exercise that we can do. Like I said, this helps us get into what we call the parasympathetic side of our nervous system, where we're more relaxed. We tend to be in the sympathetic side more often, where we're busy and going and always doing something. So this helps us just slow down a little bit. And so we can do this several times a day as needed. Like I said, get your loved one to do it along with you. It may help them just relax also.
That is wonderful. That's like a 3-minute reset. I think I'm going to do that first thing in the morning before you suddenly wake up and you've got computer screens and cell phones and everything going nuts. Monica, do you have something to add to this? Self-care?
One thing I've always said to the world of self-care, in terms like people say, I don't have room or I don't have space. And this doesn't work for everybody. Again, as we said at the beginning, all of our suggestions don't work for everybody. I wish they did. But think about the one place in your house where you really have the most privacy. Probably the bathroom, right? Like, honestly, like, I know this sounds funny, right? Everyone would be like, oh, my bedroom or the den. No, most likely it's your bathroom. Go in there, close the door, take 30 seconds in there, and take a little extra longer. So just to give yourself, again, if you find that one space in your house, take it. And even if it is the bathroom, it may not be glamorous. It may not be think of it as a spa, light a candle when you're in there. But really just try to find that one place in your house where you can make this work for yourself. And it's crucial. It's crucial to do this. That's the thing. People think, they think self-care is a luxury, but it's not. And that's one thing I know Susan and Carol and I all really try to stress. Like, one of the statistics, and it's a scary, scary statistic, but 50% of caregivers die before the person they're caring for. That's half. Because they're not taking care of themselves, they're not going to the doctor, they have their own health problems. The stress is overloaded. The stress affects your body in such a negative way. So really realizing that self-care is not a luxury. Self-care is a requirement, just like eating breakfast, just like drinking water, just like going to the bathroom. Self-care needs to be in there as part of your day.
And I'd really love to share with our audience today. We had a dress rehearsal, run a show before and practice, and something came up in this particular area that one of you said, and I can't remember who, but don't be afraid to ask someone, and hey, could you come over for just 30 minutes, or could you take my mom for a walk so I can just run to the store, or so I can, go to the doctor. And does anyone want to talk about that it's okay to ask?
Sure, I will. I think the big thing is that a lot of times other people don't know what to do. That they've never dealt with somebody who has dementia, so they're kind of uncomfortable, and then they just kind of start to pull away. So I tell caregivers, ask. People love to help. Sometimes they don't know what to do. And one of the classes that I teach, we actually practice writing down things like, what would you need from somebody, okay? And identifying what people are in their village, right? Who might I ask for help? And help can come in many different ways. Even if you feel like you can't help the person with dementia, maybe you can cut the lawn. Or when you're going to Costco, you just say, hey, what do you need? I can pick up whatever you want. Okay, those kinds of things. It doesn't have to be this big elaborate help either, but we tend to, and a lot of times I see caregivers tend to think, well, nobody else can care for Jack the way I can. So, you know what, as long as it, like Susan was saying, the big things that he's safe, right? That he's happy, that we're keeping him engaged. It doesn't matter if it's the exact same thing that the caregiver does.
And I was just going to add, it goes back to that importance of that bag of tricks, whether you have, 10 bags of 10 tricks each or just one bag, but it's also finding those like activities that, Jack loves to do, either independently or the neighborhood kid could come over and do together. So, it's going to be a successful activity. They're both going to be enjoy it. So maybe the neighborhood kid comes back another day, but that also potentially gives you 15 minutes to do a lot of breathing, Carol, or some stretching, or a 15-minute cat nap. So you can also look at that bag of tricks as a way to find little pockets of time for yourself.
This is all so incredibly helpful. I mean, I'm just taking it all in, thinking I wish I had been on this webinar 6 years ago. Oh, you guys are going to love this one. I want to help find a cure for this disease. I'm in that category. How can I find out about local clinical trials? How about Monica?
I was going to say, can I take that one? Okay.
Yes.
Depending upon where you live. So the first thing that I would recommend is the Alzheimer's Association has a site called Trial Match, and we can put that in the chat so people can get the information for that. So that is number one option. That is a nationwide program where you could type in, they ask you a few questions. What is your age? What's your family history? Da, 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 da. And then they sort of will send you emails saying, hey, Carol, this trial came up and you meet criteria. You ask, it talks about if you want interventional, if you want observational, which means like if you want to just be watched, or maybe if you want a trial where you take a medication, or there's so many different types of research. So that's one option. Another one is, it's called clinicaltrials.gov, G-O-V. It's a really hard website to navigate, but all the information for any clinical trial. So even if we're talking about diabetes, breast cancer, this is a site where all of these trials are listed. We're also, especially, so at UCLA, we are one of the California Alzheimer's disease centers. So here in the state of California, there are 10 of us, 10 different centers, and we all have different trials where we are trying to figure out, either what causes this disease, how can we slow it down, what's a caregiver's journey like, do sleep interventions help caregivers, so it really depends upon the type of study that you're interested in. Often lots of the research studies currently, if you're looking for a person with Alzheimer's disease, hoping for something for your loved one, they really need to be early stage. For years and years, research is really done on people in the later stages. But now we're seeing that the progression of the disease is already almost too great at that point in terms of the buildup of biomarkers. So we want it to be as early as possible. Ideally, people who are asymptomatic or with no symptoms, who might just have a family risk, or they might just have an elevated risk. Or we're looking for people more mild cognitive impairment, early Alzheimer's disease. Because if we want to do something about it, we need to intervene before the disease really affects the brain in terms of its brain structure, in terms of the cells and the neurons that exist. So I recommend, looking at your local institution in terms of academic institutions. I know we're reaching a broad audience today. So looking at from people in wherever local academic institutions are for you, Alzheimer's research centers. And we always say sometimes they'll be wary because there are trials out there for a cure for Alzheimer's disease. Pay us $2,500 and we're going to help you. No. We should be paying you. We want you to be a part of our trial. We need you. That is what you are giving, is you are giving your time. You are giving your commitment to this. And we're so grateful for that opportunity. Trials wouldn't be where they are without participants. And again, trials have taken place to be able to do PET scan imaging. There's a blood test that's on the horizon. That's all been done by clinical trials. We can't just say, well, let's try this out and hope it works. We need to test these things. And so we are grateful for all of the participants who do volunteer. And we need a wide, diverse group. The majority of research has been done on Caucasian males. And we need people across the board, all different ethnicities and genders, to participate so that we get a cure that's actually going to help everybody. We want something that's actually going to work across the board and not just for one small subset of the population. So,
Monica, I know that you've worked so closely about, you mentioned a blood test for a diagnosis. I'll tell you, if that happens, wouldn't it be spectacular that people would know if they need this help before they're completely symptomatic and they're questioning, whether I have that. But
exactly. We almost hope that soon, screening, cognitive screening, is going to be on the part now of where we screen for diabetes and high cholesterol, that this will just be part of a normal series of tests that occur, and not just at the age of 65, maybe at the age of 45, where we can actually intervene in the disease course.
Susan and Carol, do you have something to add about the clinical trials question?
Sure. I think a big thing is like you were just saying, Monica, is that we see in people that are younger, like people in their 20s and 30s that die from some other reason, maybe an accident or whatever. And if they have an autopsy, we see some of the changes already happening in their brains. So getting things early so we can start to make those changes. And this goes back to my answer about lifestyle also, right? That we start that out early. One other site that's out there is the National Institute of Health. They have a website, alzheimers.gov, and you can put in your location and they help you find clinical trials. I've been in a clinical trial for about a year now, and I'm what they consider normal. I always laugh when they say that. So hopefully that's true.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I think so. But it makes me feel good because I'm able to give back. It's related to that Alzheimer's disease, and I'm able to give back and help with research, especially since my dad had Alzheimer's dementia. Maybe, from something not so good happening to him, I can help with the research and help something work out.
That's very nice. Very nice. Here's another question. And I didn't think we were going to run out of time, but I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, I want to get to these questions. So I'm going to keep going. Has research been conducted? So this is a really interesting question. Has research been conducted on groups of people living in memory care? Do they lessen each other's capabilities? Susan, do you want to start on that? It's a very interesting question because if I put my dad in a memory care facility, is he going to degrade? Or is that actually a good thing? I'm going to let you go ahead and take it.
It's really a fascinating question. And I'm not familiar with any kind of hardcore research that kind of supports anything that's going to come out of my mouth from here on out. But I also know that we also hear, I placed my mom in a memory care and she could finally be herself. She didn't have to kind of live up to who she thought she was. She was no longer struggling to be who she was. She could be who she was at that moment. And this was a documentary that came out years ago, probably like early 90s. And she was a college professor and was always wearing a suit. And she moved into the memory care and finally wore comfortable clothes. And her daughter who had always had kind of a rough relationship with her mom, could reconnect and be a daughter with her. So, and I think there were some other discussions around this too, but we see so many memory cares. I mean, it's not what it used to be 10 years ago or 20 years or 25 years ago, where there are groups of people clustered together who have the same abilities. So it's not so good memory care is not going to put someone who's high functioning in the same group as somebody who's low functioning. Typically they try to cluster people of similar abilities so they can kind of relate and support and kind of bond with each other.
That's interesting that she could have a relationship with her mother again, because it took the burden of the caregiving day to day, but they could actually enjoy activities that her mother wanted. And with the pocket programming and that for my dad, it took his anxiety way down. It was almost like he just went, and it took all that angst away. But I'd love to hear responses from Carol and Monica on that.
Well, I think also that we see, like Monica was saying earlier, that socialization, right? I don't know of any research either that shows the effects, but I've just seen from my own observations is that a lot of times people really bloom when they get in a memory care center because there's others around. They may have been at home by themselves or just with one family member who's busy doing other things. This allows them, there's a lot of different programming, a lot of different activities that they might be interested in, and just getting them to do things again and feel, the staff is good about being at their level. So getting them to do things that they can accomplish, that they feel good about.
Monica, anything to add?
No, I think, Susan and Carol sort of hit it, that I will agree. I don't know of any actual research regarding that. It's also sort of a tough thing to study when you think about it. In terms of people with dementia, you need somebody who would be able to vouch for them, really be able to do baseline levels of care. It would be a tough study to actually implement. There might be one out there, but I don't know about it, so sorry.
Well, this question is for all of you to put you all on pedestals. It was such a brilliant question. I was excited. Can you please share the best place to get caregiver support groups virtually? I'll go ahead and Monica start, and everybody can chime in and put it in the chat, or we'll send this to all of the audience today. So we'll share this with you, but go ahead, Monica.
Yeah, I definitely say, plug there for, see, when I plug it, it's not like Susan self-promoting. So I'm going to plug the Alzheimer's Association. She's not self-promoting, I'm promoting for her. So,
You've done a lot
the
for me
Alzheimer's
today.
The Alzheimer's Association really is a great resource. You can go onto their website. There's chapters all across the country where you are able to type in and see what your care needs are. And there's other Alzheimer's organizations that exist locally here. We have Alzheimer's Los Angeles. They have a wide variety of support groups as well. So looking for your community resources. I say try to go to your doctor, your neurologist, your geriatrician, your primary, and ask them for support or resources. UCLA, we have a wide variety of caregiver support groups. And again, maybe your loved one doesn't have Alzheimer's disease. Maybe they have Lewy body dementia. Maybe they have frontal temporal dementia. There are disease-specific groups. And it's been so great. This pandemic has obviously thrown us all for a loop, right? All of our lives changed completely for it. At UCLA, we have a Dementia with Lewy body group. It met twice a month in Santa Monica at 6 o'clock. If any of you know the West Side, if you live in Burbank, you're not driving to Santa Monica at 6 o'clock. There's no way. That group on average had about 6 people. Now, gosh, last week I think we had 15. Our roster has just exploded. Once we had almost 20 because it's virtual. We can now meet people, reach people that we weren't able to do before. So if you're on the East Coast, maybe driving at night right now isn't really on top of your plan with the, with the storms and everything that's coming through. But this allows you to have that support. And no matter how you find it or where you find it, because it's going to be what saves you.
And I just have to add, I mean, echo everything that Monica has said, but it also gives everyone the flexibility to find a group that fits. So just because there's a support group that meets down the street doesn't mean that it's going to fit my needs. Every support group has its own kind of culture. So it allows me to kind of tailor when, where, and who, so I can find the best fit and the best support. But again, we have a younger onset support group for individuals in their 50s. And that group consists of individuals from Los Angeles, Texas, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio. So they're most concerned with connecting with other people living with dementia in their 50s. They don't care where they live. So it's been an incredible opportunity. So as much as I think I was jaded and said, our caregivers will never go to a virtual format, clearly I have been proven wrong. So I think this virtual format is here to stay in at least some capacity.
And Carol, do you want to add to that? I'm sure you would agree with what Susan said. I think virtually is going to be the norm for a lot of different things that we do.
Right. We're seeing that more people, especially people that have a loved one with dementia, they might not have been able to leave the home before because they didn't have anybody to watch their loved one. And this gives them the opportunity to do it right at home. They may have to leave the support group every once in a while just to check on something, but that's fine. We completely understand that. And I would say also when you're looking, go back to your village. We're talking about who else is there to help you. A lot of times there's people that know of resources that may be able to give you some good ideas. I teach a couple different caregiver classes and I couldn't, some of the caregivers in the class are so wonderful because they just talk about how great a support group is. I couldn't have paid them enough to be in the class and said that. And of course we have support groups at OPICA also. So feel free, look around, find one that really works for you.
That's good. That's a really good suggestion. I have a question here from Deborah. Any thoughts on getting genetic blood tests to see what APO4 genes you have, and if you have a parent that had an APO4 gene specifically? Anyone want to start with that? APO4?
Who's going to fight over it? Okay, Monica, she's raising her
I
hand.
was gonna say I could do this, Susan. I'll arm wrestle you on it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay.
That could be a good fundraiser.
Right.
Watch Susan and Monica
Virtually.
wrestle.
We can bet live.
Yeah.
So with the AP, so it's APOE, and then there's 4. There's actually 3 different kinds. There's APOE2, E3, and E4. We all get a copy of this from our parents. You get a copy from mom, you get a copy from dad, and you can have any sort of a mix. You can have an E2 and an E3, you can have 2 E2s, 2 E4s, you can have any sort of a mix of these. So the thing is research has shown that people who have 2 E4s, and especially women who have 2 E4s, you are at a greater risk of developing dementia. But the thing is that it's only a risk. It's not predictive. So you could be a woman with 2 APOE4 genes, which would put you at the greatest risk for developing Alzheimer's disease regarding the APOE genes, and never develop it. So like at UCLA, we don't do genetic testing for the APOE gene, not in our general clinic. If you are interested in it, then we definitely encourage getting a genetic counselor, talking to somebody about it first, just because, do you want that information? So if you are E4 positive and you're a woman, now you're going to have something that's lingering over your mind the whole time. Like, oh my gosh, I lost my keys. oh my gosh, this is the beginning of dementia, when maybe all it was you came home, the phone rang, the dog got out, you tossed the keys because you had a handful of stuff and you had to go get the dog and you can't find the keys. It's not dementia. It's just you were just distracted.
I think the other
So-
challenge is if you have that higher risk, but maybe never develop Alzheimer's, my brother could have the more protective combination and he could develop Alzheimer's. So
Mhm.
it's not predictive at all. And I also kind of worry about some of those ethical considerations. Not only might it change like how you look towards your life and engage in your life, but what about long-term care? What about health insurance? What about the DMV? What about all those other entities that might have access to this genetic data that may or may not, you know, play out? So we're still not really sure. So kind of from the Alzheimer's Association standpoint, we don't necessarily recommend genetic testing for especially the APOE. When you look at that younger onset, more of that kind of, you know, the genetic mutations where someone does have a 50-50 chance, that might be something that we do, someone might want to consider in that case. So something like Huntington's.
So I
then-
chose not to get tested
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
for all those exact same reasons. So I'm so glad that that question was asked.
Yeah. And also just one more little aside on that is just like, you can get tested for that, like through 23andMe, you know, that where you take a little swab and you test it. But again, we don't encourage it because it doesn't come with the well-rounded world of educating you what these results mean, because that's a big piece too. So if you have an E4 and an E3, what does that mean? And so if you go and you properly get tested somewhere, like if you want to do it at an academic institution and you have it all, then they're also going to tell you, help translate it, as opposed to you've got a big risk. Good luck. Like, you know, and also think about how would these results really change your life? Because we should still all be moving. We should all be eating well. We should all be cognitively engaged, socially stimulated. So how would these results change what you're currently doing? And again, just thinking about that, that's not a question to be answered. It's just something for you to think about.
Yeah, there's not like some special pill you can start taking if you have the gene. So
Exactly.
it's exactly why I chose not to. Another question came in that my parents are living in an assisted living facility, and all they say to me all the time is they just want to die. That's a personal question, and I'm really sorry for whoever asked it. They didn't leave a name, but that's really hard. Do you guys have any suggestions? Is it the distraction technique, or do you address it? Or I don't even know what to say.
I was just gonna say-
go ahead.
Go
Susan.
ahead. No, go
All
ahead,
right.
Carol. You're smarter than I am. Go ahead, Carol.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think it's back to also a lot of times the people that have dementia kind of lose initiative and they don't know what to do. So it may just be as simple as getting them involved, getting them active in something that they're interested in, because they're not feeling engaged or like they have a purpose in life or anything. So, and I always like to, instead of asking people with dementia if they want to do something like, hey, do you want to go for a walk with me, Dad? A lot of times they say no. Make it seem like they're helping you, right? Oh, I'm going to go out for a walk and I'd love if you'd come with me. You can keep me company and we can look at the roses down the street or something like that, making them feel like they're doing something also.
Well, everyone needs to thrive on purpose. And so if you can give them some purpose, like come help me pick out a scone, or, come help me. I mean, whatever you can say, that's great advice.
And what I was going to add is, I mean, we can't also discount that older adults have experienced significant losses. Also, someone with Alzheimer's, I mean, here they no longer are driving or independent or live in their own home. So at some point, we do also need to acknowledge that and allow them to kind of process that. But you also do see higher rates of depression in individuals in that early stage of Alzheimer's as well. And depression is treatable for everybody, and also individuals living with Alzheimer's. So it's important to kind of get that looked at and taken care of if it's something that can be addressed.
Well, that's good advice. So we have time for two more questions. Winnie just asked a question. For patients who don't speak English, how do you get them socialized?
Go to that village. Carol keeps talking about that village, and oftentimes that village has other individuals who speak those other languages. And I think what is difficult and what we do see oftentimes in Los Angeles is, mom's first language was Spanish, but then, she learned English. Well, as the dementia has progressed, she has forgotten her English and has gone back to Spanish, which is fine. And, Los Angeles, Spanish is a pretty commonly spoken language. However, for some of the more obscure languages, sometimes the kids don't speak that language as well. So that poses a little bit of difficulty. So, it's looking at that village. Are there other people who can socialize? I also think that a lot of communication and socializing doesn't have to be dependent on words. As the individual progresses through Alzheimer's, words are less meaningful. It's more of the emotion, the tone, the engagement. So, it's looking at other ways to engage with that individual that are not so dependent on language.
And Robert, thank you for joining us, but I'm going to ask one last question. I'll just direct it to Monica because we're running out of time. But my mom was put on hospice 3 months ago, and she seems to be doing better. Is that normal?
It is. And isn't that what's so interesting? Part of it is they're getting more care. They're getting specialized care. They're getting more focused care in terms of people checking in on them. It's and with dementia, for hospice, you have to have roughly like a prognosis of 6 months, but you also have to just meet criteria. That's the thing with dementia, it makes it so hard. I know someone whose mom, gosh, she's in her 90s. She has been on hospice for about 3 years, and she just got kicked off. It's sort of this ongoing joke about like how long she's going to be on hospice, and they finally kicked her off, and she has like late stage dementia, but she has been sort of plateauing for a long time now. So it is, but rest assured, give yourself the confidence that it means that your mom's actually in a good place. Like hospice does not equate death. Years ago it used to. It's like hospice, all right, you've got 6 months, make your plans and say your goodbyes. But especially with dementia, that's not it. You may still have many more years and times with your mom. And so do what you can, value those, cherish those, really make a focus to enjoy that. Because, also we know with dementia, it's not forever.
Yeah.
But something like that, you're giving your mom the best care that she can get. And that isn't that what we all want for our loved ones? We want them to have the best care. We want them to be happy and safe and secure. And I think that, you're honoring your mom really well by even having her on hospice. So many people never get to that point. And I think that's a really great gift that you're giving her.
Robert, welcome back. Thank you, Robert, the executive director at Kensington Redondo Beach. Do you want to say a few closing words, Robert?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say to all of you this afternoon, all of you have never shied away from sharing your journeys. We have all been caregivers. All of 4 of you have been caregivers. I myself are included in that. We thank you for your commitment and dedication to sharing life's techniques. And it really is life's techniques. We need them all in making a difference in the lives of people who are afflicted with cognitive decline. We at Kensington Senior Living, we're humbled, and I'm humbled by the challenges that caregivers experience every single day, but yet the amazing results that they provide in improving the lives of elders that we are committed to serve in our communities, outside of our communities. The stories that we've heard today of families that are, trying to figure out what that journey looks like and what they have to do to be able in some cases survive. And we hope that today's panel has helped individuals in that greater knowledge or help along the way to make a difference. And I thank you all once again from the Kensington Senior Living, from all of our communities across the country, to you, Susan, for your passionate commitment to understanding Alzheimer's that bit more every single day. So thank you all.
And to the audience, oops, I just moved my screen. To the audience, you will all be receiving a copy of the webinar with links to OPICA, the Alzheimer's Association, and Monica Moore at UCLA, all of their support groups. Please share the webinar with friends and family. For me, and I've been living this for 11 years, this was one of the most valuable panel discussions ever. And the takeaways and having all of you share your expertise has been phenomenal. And, I talked to Robert about this before, but hopefully we can take all of you who are in the South Bay of California, and we'd love to follow this up maybe in the springtime or May and have people join us at the Kensington and continue this conversation. So thank you, everyone. Be safe. Have a wonderful weekend and go 49ers. I had to put that. Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody. Thank
Thank you
you.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
49.